In a tavern lit by a flickering glow, these strings where the ales and the pixels flow. With a laugh so hearty it could shake the beams. It's a madness, king of digital dreams. Raise your mug to the man on the screen, with his banter sharp and his wit so keen. Click, laugh, cheer, let the good times roll. It's a madness, the bard of your soul. Fights, dragons with a pint in his hand, quests through dungeons, a hero so grand. From late night raids to the meme-filled chat, you'll find your place in the world he's at. Boy, you there? Pull up a chair. He hollers loud without a care. Raise your mug to the man on the screen, with his banter sharp and his wit so keen. Click, laugh, cheer, let the good times roll.
I'm getting one.
You got a whole half already!
The part of your soul. Boy, you there? Pull up a chair. He hollers loud without a care. Raise your mug to the man on the screen, with his banter sharp and his wit so keen. Click, laugh, cheer, let the good times roll. It's a madness, the bard of your soul. You know my pixels, he's the host of virtual taverns, proud his boast. The ale might be fake, but the laughter's true. It's a madness, he's calling for you.
What's that? This is a pint. It comes in pints. I'm getting one.
You got a whole half already!
Be fake, but the laughter's true. It's a madness, he's calling for you. Raise your mug to the man on the screen, with his banter sharp and his wit so keen. Click, laugh, cheer, let the good times roll. It's a madness, the bard of your soul. Oi, you there? Pull up a chair. He hollers loud without a care. In the realm of pixels, he's the host of virtual taverns, proudest boast. The ale might be fake, but the laughter's true. It's a madness, he's calling for you.
Enchilada, enchilada, extra spicy salsa. Eat it in the kitchen, don't step in the lava.
Okay, well, I didn't mean to have that still turned on and swapped over so fast, but hi everybody, welcome in. We do have that ad break going, so we will go ahead and finish that up and then we'll get started. I'm sure most of you know who I am anyway. But yeah, hi everybody. We'll go ahead and hang out for a couple of minutes while there's just right about a minute and a half left on the ads. So we'll let those finish up and then we'll jump back into it. But so I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off here for just a minute. We'll be right back.
Liar! Liar! Liar!
Get back, witch!
I'm not a witch, I'm your wife. But after what you just said, I'm not even sure I want to be that anymore.
You never had it so good.
This, my friend, is a pint. It comes in pints. I can get you one.
You've had a whole half already.
Okay. Those ads should be done, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump into it. Hi, Wim. Hello, Wim's chat. Thank you all so much for joining. I really appreciate it. Oh, hey, look. Wim got her sunflower seed. How did you get that with a daily pint? Did we create that at some point? I don't know. Anyway, hi, Raiders. Welcome in. Thank you so much for joining us. I really do apologize that y'all came in and immediately got smacked with those advertisements, but it is a thing that Twitch does. It's just kind of the nature of the game. So, yeah, she slipped that in there in my list at some point. Complete and total mystery, but oh well, we'll live with it. Hello, hi, I'm Amanis. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, already know who I am, but just in case you don't, hello, I'm Amanis. I am Wim's husband. I am also a professional voiceover artist. You would not have heard me in anything yet, but we're getting there. I am a dice goblin, and I'm a tabletop role player game that is... I have no control over your A list. I don't know that I trust you. Two of the things that we're actually here to talk about today is the Dice Goblin and the Role-Playing Gamer. I am a reader, I'm a tech nerd, I'm an IT manager for a small behavioral healthcare organization. I'm a former-ish WoW addict, pay no attention to that asterisk. Chat, don't say it. I'm a big fan of cooking and baking. Some of my favorite games are Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, Pathfinder 2nd Edition, again, what we're here to talk about today, and then Disney Dreamlight Valley and Palia. And I'm actually quite proud of myself. I've been playing a lot of Disney Dreamlight Valley lately, and hi, Sunny. Oh, you come in and you call me a lighter immediately. Fantastic. Thank you for that, friend. Lies. In Disney Dreamlight Valley, I have 2 characters left that are not level 10. Sonny, that is in regard to the former-ish WoW addict comment. Hello, friend. Welcome in. So very happy to see you. I hope you're having a great day. But yeah, in Disney Dreamlight Valley, I have 2 characters left that I need to get to level 10 before Pocahontas comes out. Yeah. Which is Alice of Alice in Wonderland. I believe I got her to level 6. Maybe level 7 last night. I forget which, but she has gardening as her job, preferred task, whatever you want to call it. And I have a huge pumpkin patch, so hopefully that shouldn't take too much longer. And then I also unlocked the Cheshire Cat, which I believe I either gave them mining or foraging. And I think they're level 4, so I am super close. I do still have to do all of the friendship quests for the bulk of those characters, but now that I'll have them all at level 10, there won't be anybody that's like blocking me from, oh, you have this quest, but you need to go talk to this character. Nope, I am just going to knock that out. I'm not sure who I will start with. I'll probably start off with one of the earlier characters, just starting at that lowest level of the Dreamlight Castle and work my way up, just because it could potentially, have those characters or whatever. But yeah, super close. Really excited for that. And then in a couple of weeks, we have Pocahontas coming. So looking forward to that. Okay. Now, I think we've done all of that. Handled all the raid stuff. So let me go back and see who is here. We had the Kim Chalada dropping and getting her daily pint. We had Jen as a shark, who I know is lurking because they are having a screen-free day. So Jen, if you're able to hear me, I hope you're having a great day. If not, still hope you're having a great day and hope things are going well. And then we had the amazing raid from Wim, which, yes, Wim, I just saw your Discord message, but if you did come in from Wim's stream with the raid, if you do need to raid and run, please feel free to do so. If you would like to stick around, we're obviously always more than happy to have everybody here. Just you want to take a quick break, go get a drink, go get some food, go take your meds, go do all the self-care things. Please feel free to do so. We're going to be here for a couple of hours at least, talking about Pathfinder, because we have some people in the community that are interested in hearing about that. And then if you don't want to stick around for Pathfinder, then definitely feel free to go do what you need to do. And then in just over 3 hours, we're going to be watching Twilight in the Discord, the third Twilight movie. I think this one is Eclipse. I don't remember. Yeah, I think it's Eclipse, because it's Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, and then Breaking Dawn is the last one that's in the 2 parts. So we've been doing weekly movies, and we started kind of semi-weekly movies. So we did start with the Twilight Saga, and then I think next we have maybe the Harry Potter movies. We'll have to look. We did a vote to see which ones people wanted to watch. We might break it up a little bit, but we'll see. But yeah, so feel free to go do what you need to do. And yeah, I appreciate everybody coming in and hanging out. Now that we're done with that, let me go over here. That is not showing. I need to switch that. Let's see. Change that. There we go. Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to, so this is a new thing that I'm trying, and I'm going to tell you up front that I will probably, because I am an imperfect person, I will probably make mistakes. I will probably say things that may not make the most sense. Please feel free to ask me questions in the chat. That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm doing with this, just trying something a little bit different. So one of the games that Wim and I do really enjoy playing with friends of ours in person is we have a weekly tabletop RPG game, which if you're familiar with tabletop RPG games, great. If you're not, those are games like Dungeons and Dragons, which the Critical Role crew plays. There are a lot of different tabletop role-playing games in the space that have very interesting theming elements and all of that. Most of them do tie their roots back to some level of Dungeons and Dragons. Pathfinder is one of those games. Pathfinder is based off the Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 edition. So there have been multiple different versions of like rule variants and things like that of Dungeons and Dragons. And then in the, I want to say it was like the mid 2000s ish, maybe earlier. I could be wrong. Please, again, dates and things like that. Obviously I will post links and anything like that anybody, if anybody does want to do more kind of in-depth reading and things like that. But Pathfinder is an offshoot of Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition. Originally when D&D was created, it was done with an open gaming license, which basically said, hey, we are going to create Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to create this specific thing, but we're going to create it under something called the Open Gaming License, which basically says you can take Dungeons and Dragons, kind of our core like rule set, so rolling D20s and everything like that, which is kind of what everybody thinks about when they hear about Dungeons and Dragons. you can take that and you can kind of create your own offshoot and things like that. When Dungeons and Dragons, which is owned by Wizards of the Coast, also if you're familiar with Magic, kind of the same thing, they made a transition from that open gaming license. They basically changed the rules within the license and basically said, okay, we're going to take more direct ownership of this. We're going to, we want more ownership. And Pathfinder. So at the time, Pathfinder was actually was created by a magazine that was running a lot of Dungeons and Dragons material and things like that. They had created kind of a separate, almost a homebrewed game based around the rules of Dungeons and Dragons. And they said, hey, we don't really like how you're doing that. We're going to go create our own thing. And that's how Pathfinder kind of started. So there are a lot of really huge amount of similarities between Pathfinder First Edition and Dungeons and Dragons third edition 3.5 English. I speak it. And then now Pathfinder has actually moved to a second edition, and then they've actually remastered the second edition. So they're continuing to kind of pull themselves away from that very heavily D&D based structure. There are still a lot of similarities because there's only so many ways that you can play dice games, tabletop role-playing games. But there are a lot of differences to it. That was way more detail than anybody needs in this context, but welcome to my TED Talk. I am Amanus. This is one of the hyperfixation things. The goal of this stream, or potentially series of streams, is how do I play Pathfinder? Everybody always hears about, I play Dungeons and Dragons, and I do this and I do that. But there are a lot of people who don't have an understanding of how to play, how to get started, where to find groups, things like that. Or if they are able to find those spaces, they also have a difficult time finding safe spaces, learning spaces, because there are a lot of people in the Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, tabletop communities in general who do gatekeep a little bit. It's unfortunate. It's a side effect of just everything. So that's kind of what this space is intended to be, as a safe space. Please ask questions, offer your opinion. Ask me how it compares to D&D. Like, I don't mind, because I want to make this as open as I can so that people can learn, because it's a really cool hobby, even outside of the dice collecting. It's a lot of fun. You get to, play different characters. Which is sexier? Pathfinder. You get to play different characters. You get to explore different aspects of yourself through these characters. I mean, that's kind of how I decided that I wanted to get started with voiceover. Is I'm creating all of these characters, and a part of that character is, okay, well, how does this character sound in my head? And then I get to bring that character to life, and I get to, give this character a voice. And it creates this whole other side, this whole other aspect of Amanus. I am Amanus. This is me. However, I take that back. Hi, this is Tim. If you're not familiar with me, hello. Tim is my first name. Not my full first name, but we won't get into that. There is a whole other separate part of me that is Amanus the dwarf. Who? What? And that's even a whole separate story as well of how I got to Amanus and things like that. But Amanus is a dwarf paladin. He is in World of Warcraft. He's in D&D. He's in Pathfinder. He's in all of these different places, but he is my alter ego. He is the other side of me that is a little more of the chaotic side, a little more of the, go out and do things, He's the one that's going live on the stream, because it sure as heck isn't Tim. So it gives you a chance to express yourself and an opportunity to put yourself out there and do cool things. So this is just a very beginner-friendly walkthrough. You don't need any experience with tabletop games or anything in particular. This is just kind of understanding how it works. And then if we continue to do this, if this is something that people enjoy, then we can start digging into it a little bit more. Please, like I said, ask questions if you're not sure about something or you want to see something specific, or, you're like, oh, hey, could you do this? Let me know. Say something in the chat, whatever. Send women to throw something at me. That's what I'm here for. So one of the things about Pathfinder is that there are aspects of combat in the game. So there is kind of some of that tactical thinking. Nothing yet. You're not throwing anything yet. So there are some aspects that are tactical thinking, like, hey, what's the best, position that I can get in to attack this, in this case, dragon? Oh, so you're leaving because you don't get to throw stuff. Okay. So there is some tactical thought process to it, but part of it too is just being intuitive, like thinking about you as your character. What would they do in this situation? It doesn't necessarily have to be what you as a person would do, but again, maybe you have a character who is, a dwarf. I have multiple kitsune characters, which are fox creatures. Like, it doesn't have to be you, but it gives you a chance to kind of explore stuff outside of yourself. Hi, Elvira. Welcome in. The other thing about Pathfinder is that one of the quote unquote problems, and I'm not going to, I say problems, but one of the things that is different between Pathfinder and Dungeons and Dragons is the math. With Dungeons and Dragons, the things can get a little bit more hairy with the math because you have different bonuses and different, all sorts of different things. Now, in Pathfinder, you also have bonuses, but those bonuses are very predictable and they're based on very specific numbers. So they're consistently applied across all of the different classes. So it has a very low floor so that it is relatively easy for people to learn. However, there is a very high skill cap that if you want to get to, you can do a lot of really crazy stuff. So it's all about what you want to do. All of the choices that you make do matter. You do get bonuses for different things. So you don't get a lot of the, oh, that's just a throwaway number, or, oh, you're not going to use that, or things like that. You can use all of the abilities that you have. You you can have a 6 foot tall, 300-pound berserker warrior who tries to be a social being, who tries to be the polite person. You can do that. You can have fun with that. He may not have the best bonuses for it, but it's still something that he could try and do instead of the DM or the GM just saying, no, you can't do that. A lot of it is that improvisational, okay, I want to do this. And the player comes up to their GM and says, oh, I want to do this thing. The GM's not going to say no. It's about improvisation. It's about, okay, let's figure out together how we can do this. A specific example, and I'm going to use her because she's playing in the game that I'm running, Whim. One of her characters is, to the surprise of absolutely nobody, a catfolk. Whim's catfolk has a distinct penchant for climbing characters that are taller than she is, because I think she's a medium-sized creature. So if it's a large creature, she is climbing this creature and trying to claw their eyes out because she is a cat. That is her instinct. There's not a specific thing in the rule book, as far as I know, that says, oh, you need to do this. So, but we made it work because that is the role. That is the GM's role, is let your players have fun with it. As a part of that, there are a couple of different things a couple of different acronyms and things like that you'll hear, which is rules as intended, RAI, rules as written, or ROC, rule of cool. So, and the way that works is there are multiple Pathfinder books available. One of the things that they've done in the Pathfinder 2nd edition remaster is they've kind of reorganized the way that those books work. There are now core books. Previously, there was just one. There's a lot of books, but the one big fat book that everybody needed was the player handbook. It was a big, thick, complicated book with lots of pages and small print that was everything for the game. Not a bad thing to have, but it was just, there was a lot. Now they've reorganized it so that there are slightly smaller books broken down into core functions of the game. For example, what we have right here on my screen right now is the player core book. This book is the one that is specifically for players of the game and everything, all of the information that they would need to play the game. There's another book called GM Core, which is for the people on the other side of the table, like me, who are going to be the people running the game, that gets more into the specific rules of, hey, how do I interpret this thing? How do I, manage this piece of, this portion of the game, this segment, whatever. Those are the two big ones. Most people will probably only ever use the player core. There's another one called NPC core that's people in the world, just giving you inspiration for people to put into the world to make it feel alive. There's yet another book called Beast Core, Bestiary, something like that, Monster Core, that is all of the creatures that your players could potentially run into in the world, who they're going to be fighting against. So they're really trying to make this more beginner friendly. Most people won't ever need GM Core unless they're looking for a specific thing. Player Core is kind of the Bible. So that is rules as written. That is, hey, this book says this specific thing. This is going to be consistent across every game. You will occasionally find GMs who decide that they want to do things a little bit differently. They're entitled to do that. It's their table, as long as they're applying the rules consistently, which is the biggest thing. As long as the rules are applied consistently to everybody, that's totally okay. That's what we go for. One step down from that is rules as interpreted, rules as intended, things like that. Occasionally there will be a conflict in the books that says, like, hey, this book says that you can do it, way A. This other book says that it's actually way B. At that point, it's down to the GM. Play it the way that you want it, apply it consistently, call it good. And then the third one of those, which is the really fun one, is the rule of cool. Okay, well, there's not a specific rule that says that Wim's character, again, that I've found, caveats as always, there's not a specific rule that says that Wim's character, as a cat folk, is allowed to climb somebody like a tree and claw their eyes out. However, it was a thing that Wim wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that she was able to do that. So we said, okay, rule of cool. How can we do this? Let's make this happen. Yeah, you with your torch. So those are kind of the big things. There aren't intended to be any gotcha rules, anything that's like, oh, you want to do this, but there's this really niche specific rule that says that, oh, on page 457, part 2, bullet point 3A specifically says you can't do that. No, they try to be very clear about the rules and say, yes, you can do that. No, you can't do that, but here's why. And here's what you can do instead. When comparing Pathfinder back to Dungeons and Dragons, one of the things that a lot of people talk about is there a heavy preference toward spellcasters or martial classes, which are like the physical damage dealers. So basically wizards versus knights. they try to find a balance between those two groups of characters. They try to make clear rules that reduce disputes at the table, where one person says, oh, well, you said this, and then somebody else says, oh, no, well, they said this. And it tries to do away with a lot of that. Your characters are intended to grow in meaningful, visible ways at pretty much every level. Because what you'll find that a lot of times what happens is you get, to level 3, 4, 5. You've gotten a lot of really cool abilities, a lot of really cool stuff, and then you hit this slog. And I'm throwing generic numbers because I haven't played D&D in a long time, but you hit this slog of like level 5 through level 10 or through level 12 or 15 or whatever, where it's just a grind, and all it is the numbers look better, but you don't get any actual new skill, any new ability that you're going to use consistently. With Pathfinder, that's not the case. Pretty much every level, you're getting some new thing to grow your character, either in their ancestry, in their background, in their class, and we'll go over what all of those things are later. But there's other ways to grow your character. The system also rewards creativity. If you want to do a really cool thing, like climb a character and claw their eyes out, the system lets you do that, or allows you to find a way to do that. And then if you do that, the GM can reward you for being creative like that. So that's pretty much how that is. We're almost done with the talking and stuff like that, I promise. So the actual core gameplay of Pathfinder breaks down into kind of 3 main areas. There's exploring, there's encounters, and there's downtime. Exploring is what a lot of people think of when you think of going into a dungeon. You pull out your torch, you light your torch, and you start looking. So you're looking for, I'm going to use Indiana Jones because that's a pretty universal example. Indiana Jones enters the temple looking for the Holy Grail. He has the couple of, things that he has to get through, which is the saw blades and the path and all this, all the different things. So that happens in the exploration mode. It's not kind of unless it's a specific thing, time is a little bit loose. Things kind of happen, progress in their own timeline. It's a little bit timey-wimey. As long as you are performing some form of activity and you are very clear with your GM, hey, I am, we're in a library. I am going to specifically go look at this, look at a shelf, and I'm looking for papers. I'm looking for a book. I'm looking for, a stamp collection, something like that. That's the exploration mode. The next one that most people think of is the encounter mode. Oh, look, I'm exploring in this library, and all of a sudden a specter of some ancient librarian thinks that I'm being too loud, I'm making too much noise, and now they're ticked off and they're going to start trying to drop stacks of books on me. What do I need to do? That is where the encounter portion kicks in. You roll for initiative, which determines what order people get to do things in. One of the things that Pathfinder does, hi, Mrs. Bone Daddy, welcome in.
What's that?
In this one, in the encounter portion,
Comes in paints?
that's where a
getting
lot
You've had all half already.
think about stuff. Okay, what do I want to do? How do I want to attack this thing? So you roll your initiative. That determines the order that people take their turns. And then Pathfinder uses a thing called the 3-action economy. So with different systems handle it differently. There are some who, okay, on your turn, you get to move one time and you get to take one action.
My friend is a pint.
Whether it's cast a spell,
in
whether
pints?
it's, swing your sword,
getting one.
whether you want to
You've
just
got all
rip
half
off a
already.
guy, like... with Pathfinder, you get 3 actions. What you choose to do with those actions is up to you. If you want to or need to use all 3 to move 75 feet to go start smacking this ghostly librarian around, you can do that. They're your actions. You get to use them as you will. This is where some of the tactical positioning does come in. We'll get into that a little bit, but there is a thing where instead of advantage like D&D has, where, you know, if you are standing on one side of this spectral librarian and somebody is standing on the opposite side, in D&D, you get to roll you get to roll advantage. Now the kind of downside with advantage is that you could still roll poorly on both and you don't get to do nothing. It feels bad. With Pathfinder, thinking about tactical positioning, instead of rolling for advantage or disadvantage, you get bonuses or, or not, depending on where you're at. If you are flanking a, creature that you're trying to attack, instead of rolling advantage, they are off guard. So they would be, basically, if somebody's like, at that point it turns into, they're functionally facing away from you. So they are trying to hold off 2 enemies at the same time. So their attention is divided. So you get a bonus to your attack, to your roll to try and hit them instead of you just rolling twice. So it makes it a little bit more consistent in being able to hit them. And there's a very clear turn structure of everybody gets 3 actions. That's it. There's no, this creature has a legendary attack, so they get to go like 17 times. No, that's not how that works. You get 3 actions. The other thing that a lot of people don't necessarily think about as much is after you finish that encounter and you've finished exploring, there's a downtime phase. And in that downtime phase, you can do things like craft potions, you can rest, you can do research, you can retrain your skills, you can, again, it's up to you and the GM to ask questions and determine what you want to do and how you can do that. So those are kind of the 3 main areas of Pathfinder. Ultimately, if you understand the basics, which is kind of what we're going for here, everything else is pretty simple. And if it's not simple, then there are ways to make it simpler. I don't know where I was going with that sentence. But either way, everything comes back to the same core gameplay elements, and it's consistent across everybody. So you can go from being a player in one of my games to being a player in one of our friends' games, and the rules are the same across the board. Okay, so we'll get more into this later, but this is a character sheet. So this is just the one of the really cool things that Pathfinder has, and D&D actually has it as well, is they have a starter box, starter kit, whatever you want to call it, that gets players into the game. It's a very simple, very broken down thing. You don't have to create characters. You don't have to do anything. It's just you grab you and 4 of your friends. One of you says, okay, I'll be the GM. Okay, cool. Here's books for you. Here's player sheets for you. Go. Character sheets. So this is one of those character sheets. This is Valeros the Fighter from the Pathfinder starter kit. Thank you so much for that follow. I really appreciate it. We do have anonymous follows turned on, so if you'd like to pop in and say hello, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, feel free to hang out and just enjoy the show. With this specific character sheet, they have some very nice artwork because it's directly from the company. It gives you the name of the character. Hi, Sam. And then it gives you kind of basically just a really high level overview of what the character does. In this case, this is a fighter. This is the bread and butter Pathfinder class. This is,
You got a whole half already.
This is Aragorn. If we're going to put it in Lord of the Rings terms, this is Aragorn. This is a guy who is in the front, who is fighting. They've got great weapons. They have great armor, and they're able to... Thank you so much for that follow, PD. I really appreciate it. And this is the beginner box character sheet. So on the side here, you'll see all of the different dice. So the starter edition starter pack did a really cool thing. They color coded all of this stuff so that you can kind of see, like, it just makes it a lot easier to interpret. So this is a very simplified version of the character sheet. There are other versions out there that have a lot more detail, but this is just a starter one. So they try to keep it simple. We've got character name, pronouns, the name of the player, so which person is playing this character, so that if you're keeping all of it, if one person is keeping all of this stuff together, it's a lot easier to hand stuff out at the start of the session. So every character breaks down into 3 kind of core areas of your character. There's ancestry, which used to be called race, but we're not going to get into the etymology of that word. So there's ancestry, background, and class. Ancestry is, what is your character? In this case, it's a human. In some of my characters' cases, there's a kitsune, which is a fox creature. I have an orc. I have a hobgoblin. Like, think about all of those different fantasy ancestries that you've ever heard of in reading books or watching movies, elves and things like that. That is your ancestry. Part of that ancestry is heritage. So if you're a specific type of human, because there are different, it's just about recognizing that Australian humans are different than Arizonan humans, are different than humans from the UK. Like, overall, we're still built the same, but we have things that make us unique from within the world. The next thing is background. What did you do before you became an adventurer? In this character's case, they were a farmhand. They worked on a farm. So based on that selection, so based on the ancestry and the background, they have certain attributes, bonuses, things like that. We'll get into that. This person used to be a farmer. Maybe somebody used to be a musician, or they used to be a, court jester or something like that. Where does your character come from? What is their background? What did they do that drove them into the life of an adventurer? And that also gives you bonus abilities and things like that again, make your character who they are. The last thing of this kind of core tentpole stuff is your character's class. This is where we get into, are you a bard? Are you a sorcerer? Are you a cleric? Are you, who is your character? What is your character? In this case, this one is a fighter. And this is a couple of their abilities that they get: reactive strike and sudden charge. I'm not going to get into that at the moment. We'll get there. So the next thing on the list is attribute modifiers. This is a significant change from D&D, if you're familiar with D&D. With Pathfinder. So let me go back. With Dungeons and Dragons, this is the part that always throws people, because there's different systems on how your GM wants to have you roll your characters. Most of the time it's, okay, take a whole bunch of D6s, roll those D6s, take out one of them, and those are the things that become your attributes. Those are the things that you apply to your character. That is not how Pathfinder works. With Pathfinder, all of these things, strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, all of those things start at a 10. That's it. And you'll notice that the 10s don't even appear here. We'll get there. All of those things start at functionally 10 points. And then as you make decisions based off your ancestry, your background, and your class, that will change these attribute modifiers. And they'll give you bonuses. They could take away certain things to get you to these attribute modifiers, because that helps kind of inform all of the rest of this sheet. As we get into it, we'll reach a point where we do start creating a character as a group, and I'll explain kind of where these numbers come from and how they're calculated and all that kind of stuff. The next thing on the list is hit points. Basically, that comes down to your ancestry and your class. Kind of determine how many hit points you have. So between your ancestry, your class, and your level, how many hit points do you have? Again, this is not a thing that people roll for. It's not a kind of a guessing game. It's a very clear, okay, well, this guy is a level 1 human. So they are, hi and bye, Jen. They are given a certain number of hit points for being human. They are given a certain number of hit points for being a fighter. There are abilities and feats and things like that that you can pick up that could potentially, I think it's more feats, but there are certain things that you can pick up that give you additional hit points, but pretty standard. If you have a human fighter, this is going to be their hit points. Pretty simple. Speed. How fast do you move? It's less speed in its amount that you can move, but it's easier to just call it speed. So this guy moves 25 feet. So the other thing about the Pathfinder character sheet that is really cool, at least with the starter ones, actions. So we were talking about earlier about the 3 action economy and kind of how that works. Yes, feet, the standard of measurement for distance in the US. Everything takes 1 action, 2 actions, or 3 actions, and that's what these icons indicate. So for feet, if you want to stride, if you want to move, basically just standard walking pace, it takes 1 move to do that in combat. If you're not in combat, typically you don't worry about it. But it is 1 action for this character to move 25 feet. The next thing, I'm going in order of that they have everything listed here. So the next thing is skills. So this is all the stuff that your character can do. Everything that your character does will fall into one of these categories. So we've got acrobatics. Oh, my character wants to do a somersault. Okay, well, this guy, because of the things that they have, Kim has been digging holes all day. She's in peak form. Well, okay, but if she's digging down, how is she in peak form? That's my question. So for skills, there are 4 levels of knowledge. There's trained, there's expert, there's master, and there's legendary. They only have trained and expert because these are low-level characters here, but they're just trying to keep it simple. How good are you at this thing? Do you have a little bit of training? Do you have a little bit more training? Are you, basically just how long have you been doing this thing? And that determines how good you are at each of these things. So trained, expert, master, legendary are these checkboxes. This, I wish I had a better mouse pointer. So this column with the +5, +1, +7, +4, this column is determined by everything to the right of it. So it's the total of all of the boxes on the right hand side. So you'll see acrobatics, for example. Nope. So you'll see here acrobatics as an example. This character is trained in acrobatics. So their dexterity, which carries over from their attribute modifiers, acrobatics you can see is a dexterity based skill. And then they get a proficiency bonus based on being trained to do acrobatics and their level. So if you're trained in something, you get a +2, and then you add your level to that for your proficiency. It's also possible that they could be taking a penalty depending on the type of armor that they're wearing. So if you look, zoomed in a little bit more, so you'll see the +5 here equals the dexterity modifier plus the proficiency bonus minus armor. This character either isn't wearing armor or they're wearing armor that doesn't give them a bonus. But so the 2 plus the 3 gives them the bonus of 5. So when they're playing a game and the GM says, okay, fighter, you want to do this thing, I need you to roll me an acrobatics check. So at that point, and of course, how did I not bring any dice in here? Anyway, at that point, the GM says, hey, fighter, I need you to roll an acrobatics check for that. The fighter's going to roll a d20, which is what most rolls in the game will be based around rolling a d20, adding this bonus, this modifier here, this bonus, and giving the DM the total. So say I roll a 13, I add the 5 to the acrobatics, so I have a roll of 18. Now, depending on the difficulty class of the activity that I'm trying to perform, there's 4 different things that could happen. I could critically fail, and the success versus failure is a little bit different than D&D again, but I could critically fail, I could fail, I could succeed, or I could critically succeed. How well did I do this acrobatics thing that I'm trying to do? The way that the math works in Pathfinder, like I said, is a little bit different than in D&D. In Pathfinder, the numbers aren't kind of locked within that 1 to 20 space. You could do really, at higher levels, you could do really well. Your proficiency bonus could be 17. So I could technically have, and not for this specific character at level 1, but I could have a dexterity of 2. If I'm a much higher level, I could have a proficiency bonus of 17. So then this becomes a 19, plus my 13 becomes a 42. It's all about, again, the math. That's what it breaks down to, is where in the math you're at. Now, with those types of rolls, instead of it being a 1 is an automatic fail, a 20 is an automatic success, critical success, whatever, there's ranges. So if I'm rolling an acrobatics check, and again, we'll use the smaller numbers here as an example. So I'm rolling an acrobatics check. I roll a 13. I get my +5 bonus, so I have an 18. Now, depending on what I'm doing and what the difficulty class that's been assigned, determined by the GM is, sticking with that 18. Let's say that the difficulty class for what I'm trying to do something pretty basic. I'm trying to do a somersault. Let's say the difficulty class is a 5. So really low. It's a basic somersault. I'm just out playing on the grass. I rolled an 18. Since my roll is 10 or more points higher than what I needed, so the difficulty class was 5, I rolled an 18. I beat that 5 by 13 points. I was really successful. I just did the most amazing somersault anybody has ever seen, because that's a critical success, because I rolled higher than what I needed by at least 10 points. Let's change it up a little bit. Now, instead of trying to do a basic somersault, I'm trying to do a standing, basically trying to jump up, do a somersault, and then land back on my feet. It's a little bit tougher. Let's say that the difficulty class is now 17. A little bit closer. I still succeeded, so I'm okay. Let's say that the difficulty class, instead of being a 17, is a 23. If sticking with that 17 that I rolled earlier, 18 that I rolled earlier, now I've failed. So in trying to do this somersault, I fell, landed on my back. That's okay. No harm, no foul. We move on. Now, let's say I'm trying to do something really impressive. There's a really pretty barmaid over there. I'm really trying to impress her. So I'm trying to do, multiple in a row, something like that. So we'll call the difficulty class for this one a 30. Still sticking with that same roll of 18. Well, I have now missed that roll by 12 points. That 10-point threshold again comes into play. So now instead of failing, I've now critically failed. So in this case, I'm trying to do, front flips in a bar in a tavern, and I, in the process of flipping, smack my head on the table. So I've now knocked myself unconscious, and then I landed on the edge of the table, flipped the table up, and I am now covered in drinks and unconscious, or at least dazed, because I critically failed that roll. That's kind of that range. So if you miss by more than 10 points or you succeed by more than 10 points, it becomes either a critical failure or critical success. Those, not all the time, it's kind of up to the discretion of the dungeon master, but those can have other negative effects other than you failed or you succeeded. The other thing is, because we are still rolling d20s, rolling a natural 1 is not automatically a critical failure. What that does is it decreases the level of success by 1 point, or by 1 level. Rolling a natural 20 increases that level of success by 1 level. So let's say, again, we're still trying to do this basic somersault. So in this case, using the 5 points, now let's say I roll a natural 1. I still have my +5 modifier, so I now have a 6. Because I rolled the natural 1, so with the 6, I still technically should have succeeded because I still beat the 5 that I needed for the somersault. Now, because I rolled a natural 1, that decreases my level of success by 1. So I go from a success to a fail. So even though I still beat the 5, because I rolled the 1, I still get to be quote unquote punished for that, and I still fail. Now, on the flip side of that, if I roll a natural 20, the level of success goes up a level. So let's say I am trying to, again, back in that same situation with the barmaid. So I roll a natural 20, and we'll go back to, sorry, nose is trying to sneeze on me. Trying to impress the barmaid. I roll a natural 20, but let's say that for what I'm trying to do, I'm really...
Hey, who's got my hat?
We're trying to impress a barmaid, Jen. Just talking about success versus failure. I'm really trying to impress this barmaid. So I roll a d20. I come up with a level 20. Sure, yeah. Well, that's how we get to the other things later. Impressing the barmaid. So I roll a natural 20, but I don't quite meet the difficulty threshold that I need to be successful at this whole process of what I'm trying to do. So I stick the landing, but I still, slip. Because even if I don't necessarily meet the threshold of, you have to beat this threshold by 10 or more points, if you roll a natural 20, it still upgrades the level of success to the next level. So instead of a standard success, it becomes a critical success. All kinds of really good things happen. And that's how you go with it. If we get into actual combat situations, it gets a little bit better. This is one of the points where things get a little bit hairier and people could talk about they kind of struggle with Pathfinder a little bit. It gets better once you actually see how it works. Okay. So that is skills. And of course, you can see all of the different skills that are available. And then where each of those bonuses come from. So dexterity, intellect, strength, charisma. I'll post in the Discord, but there's a really awesome breakdown of each of the different attribute modifiers and how they relate to tomatoes. So for example, strength. Strength is how good you are at smashing tomatoes. This guy's got a strength of +4. He's pretty strong. He can smash tomatoes pretty easily. Dexterity. How good are you at dodging tomatoes being thrown at you? This guy's got a +2. He's okay at it. He's not great at it, but he's not bad. Constitution. How many tomatoes basically can you be hit by? I forget the specific one. I'll look for it and I'll post it in the Discord later. But how many tomatoes can you handle being thrown at you at one time? Intelligence. Do you know that a tomato... Yes. Wisdom is knowing tomatoes are fruit. Intelligence is not putting it into a fruit salad. Yeah, pretty much. Pathfinder is tomatoes. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it does relate to that. We are going to go ahead and take a quick break while the ads run. So while we let those run, how am I doing? Does anybody have any questions? Am I moving too quickly, too slowly? Am I putting y'all to sleep? I was really kind of anxious about doing this earlier, so, because I really enjoy Pathfinder. I would have a lot of fun with it. Jen, it wouldn't be too bad because you're right. They are really close. There are some pretty key differences, but I think most DMs who are open to open to Pathfinder understand that a lot of people are going to be transitioning over from D&D, especially 5th edition, and so are open to kind of breaking down what the differences are and things like that. And chances are anybody who's not, you probably don't want to be at their table anyway. And like, I have no problem talking about those differences. And the other thing too is that like people like different things and it's okay to like different things, and just don't gatekeep. But yeah, like each system kind of has its benefits and its downsides. And so it's about finding the one that works for you. Like Pathfinder is really working for me and Wim, but we're not completely opposed to playing D&D either. I have the Dungeons and Dragons starter box in my closet too. But yeah, in general, both systems are a lot of fun. There are some pretty significant differences, and it just comes down to personal preference at that point. The thing that we just kind of talked about with the bonuses and stuff like that of nat 20s and nat 1s not automatically being failures or successes, I think is one of the really significant differences between the two systems that a lot of people have a hard time kind of, kind of getting used to, because for so long, and D&D in general it's the big one. It's the big daddy in the room. And so that's the one that a lot of people are familiar with. And so it's nice because it doesn't automatically turn those into, oh, a nat 20 is an automatic win or a nat 1 is an automatic fail. Like, yeah, chances are it's going to be, you know, the result isn't going to be great, but it's also not as hit or miss on, oh, I rolled a nat 1, now everything is going to be terrible. Not necessarily. It just means that it didn't go quite as you planned. And so, like, yeah, it's still cool to roll nat 20s, and it still kind of sucks to roll nat 1s, but it's not as impactful and it's not as hurtful. And like, even for people who are familiar with Critical Role, you know, if that's kind of where people are coming from, even the Critical Role game technically started off as a Pathfinder game. Yeah, some of the best stories come out of nat 1s. You know, even Critical Role started off as a Pathfinder game and turned into a D&D game because it was a little bit, not necessarily easier, but it was a little more palatable, a little bit more what people were familiar with. That doesn't mean anything whenever it comes to good system versus bad system. It's how the game plays. You know, we had a story a couple of weeks ago where I rolled a nat 1 and we thought that one of our party members killed another one of our party members. Like, it's just like that stuff still happens in Pathfinder too, those funny moments. So it's really cool. Okay, welcome back, everybody. So we kind of went over the skills. I'm not going to break down too much, but acrobatics is how good are you at dodging tomatoes? Arcana, what do you know about the magic behind tomatoes? Athletics, how good are you at throwing those tomatoes? Crafting, can you make a fruit salad using tomatoes? Just make ketchup. Deception, how good are you at selling a tomato to somebody for a ridiculously high price? If you die in the game, do you die in real life? That depends on which type of game you're playing. If you want to go super hardcore, if you're playing one of my games and you ask me, I'll kill you. Halfling rogue, nat 1, fell downstairs, and though I took enough damage to break my arm and take me out of the fight, it ended up the wall I broke was a shortcut to get us around some grunts. See, okay, that's fun. And I love those kinds of stories. Sorry that your arm got broken, but glad you found the shortcut. You just found it the hard way. It was an exploration tactic. Diplomacy is how nice are you about telling somebody that they have ketchup smeared on their face. Intimidation. I'm going to throw this tomato at you. Lore, in this case farming. What do you know about farming tomatoes? Medicine. If I cut this tomato in half, could you sew it back together? Nature. Tell me about the history of tomatoes and the etymology. Occultism. Worship the tomato. Religion, or no, I'm sorry, I skipped performance. To be or not to be, will this tomato turn into ketchup? Religion, could you convert people to worshiping your tomato? Society, do you suppose tomatoes have a society, a hierarchy of, you know, different types of tomatoes or different levels of society? Stealth, how good are you at stealing this tomato? Survival, how many different recipes can you use this tomato in? And thievery, how good are you at stealing this tomato? Okay. Back up. So we already talked about class. Perception. This is going to be, in Pathfinder, perception is kind of the big, there's a reason it's in its own box. Pathfinder's use of perception is a big one. Perception typically, most of the time, determines your initiative order. Firefly, we'll have to post it later, but there is a breakdown of the D&D like stats and things like that using tomatoes, and it's so good. It's so funny. And it's also genuinely really helpful. Perception determines your initiative, obviously with a roll. You roll, you add your perception. Basically, how aware are you of the world around you? Do you see the tomato? Thank you, Jen. I appreciate it. There will be times where you'll potentially use other things like stealth. You're a sneaky rogue. Do you get to use your stealth as your initiative roll? Thank you, Em. Or Jen beat you to it. Either way, we'll get it posted. Saving throws are kind of the basic, fortitude. How well do you stand up to having a tomato thrown at you? Reflex. Can you dodge the tomato? Will save. The tomato is trying to convince you to not put it into a fruit salad. Do you believe the tomato? That analogy is so good. So defenses is where we start getting into things like armor class. What kind of armor is your character wearing? Are you, a caster and you're using cloth armor, or are you a big plate wearing barbarian, So that's where this is documented. Proficiencies, again, we talked about this a little bit with skills. Let's see. I just want to double check that. Yep, that's the one. Yeah, so armor proficiencies. How good are you at wearing this armor? Can you only wear unarmored, so cloth armor? Can you wear light, medium, or heavy? And that comes down to skills and feats and things like that. If your character can carry a shield, this is documented on here as well. Weapons and attacks, again, same thing. What kind of weapons is your character good at using? Can you only use simple stuff like a staff or a dagger or things like that? Can you use martial weapons, so something bigger like a sword or a warhammer? Can you only use your fists? And then there are other weapon proficiencies we get into. And then a list of your weapons. And again, what is your character using whenever you're swinging this weapon? So for example, this is a long sword. You use your strength bonus or your strength modifier, as well as your proficiency in the type of weapon to swing this sword, and it determines how good you are at attacking the thing that you're attacking. How good are you at swinging this longsword? How much damage does it do? So this is where, going back to the different dice that we have over here. So there's the D4, the 6, 8, 10, 12, and 20. This tells you how many and what size die. So 1d8 means that you're going to roll one of these d8, and then you get to add your strength modifier. It smells really good in here already. You get to roll 1d8, and you get to add 4 from your strength. So you take your your longsword in this case, you swing, say you hit the guy. How hard do you hit him? How much damage do you do to this character? And this is also where crits come in again. And then what type of damage does that weapon do? Slashing, bludgeoning. So slashing is like, does your weapon have an edge on it? Bludgeoning is, does your weapon have just a big flat piece like a hammer? Piercing, is it a really thin sword like a rapier? It just depends on what you're looking at. So this is just a little bit more of kind of what we've already talked about. So list of equipment, stuff that you're carrying with you. So a backpack that has flint and steel to start fires, soap, a bedroll, all of your stuff is here. And then, so this portion of the sheet only exists on the starter character sheets. And then there's an about section talking about this specific character. So again, we get a little bit more about the background, the circumstances of his life, where he learned all of basically how to be a fighter. Let's see. Okay. So, for example, I really should have set this up sooner. Okay, so let me see if I can. Let me see if I still have this set up. Birds and Dragons. No. Okay. Actually, I should not have done that either, because I'm not playing. Pick a character sheet. All right. Block that. I don't know. Some guy. Okay, so let's see. What do I have? Do I have access to tokens? Monsters? Okay, so let's say I have this golem. And see if it'll let me do it. Bits of what? What do I have bits of? Free assets, heroes and villains. Here we go. Okay, so so this is a system called Roll20 that lets us basically do exactly what I'm doing here. So it is what are y'all doing? Bits of what? Are you talking about Tim Hortons Timbits? Anyway. Okay. So, this is our fighter character. This is our, what did we pick for this guy? So this is our golem. This is the bad guy. So let's say it's my character's turn. Now again, I have 3 actions to take on this turn. And I can do whatever I want with those actions. So for my first action, I'm currently standing 10 feet away from this character. So you'll see that we have this map that has all of the line squares already kind of broken down. in most games, most map systems... Why are you being like that? In most of these map systems, you'll see it's just a series of grid squares. These squares are 5 feet each. That just helps kind of measure out the movement for all the different characters. So this warrior, or this fighter, has a speed of 25 feet. So on his turn, his first move, because he wants to come and attack this guy, gets to move 10 feet, 2 squares. Now he's standing directly in front of this guy. Bye, Jen. Thank you for coming, hanging out. Have a good day. Good luck with the goober. So he's moved his 10 feet. The next thing that he's going to do is he's going to swing his long sword to attempt to strike this enemy. So we'll just do it on screen here because I don't have dice on me, but... So he is going to, and it works a little bit differently, but in Roll20, he's going to roll 1d8 plus 4. The nice thing about online systems like this is they do the math for you. So he rolls 1d8 plus 9. So in here, you can see that it automatically does the math for you of rolling the 1d8, which he got an 8 on. Oh wait, no, that's damage. See, even I mess it up occasionally. First, you have to roll to actually strike this guy, which is roll 1d20 plus 9. My brain is just not functional. So we rolled a 1d20 plus a 9, so I rolled a 19. That's a really nice 10. That's an average roll. That's pretty solid. In this case, this guy I really picked him. Whenever you roll, the DM will tell you if you hit the character, if you did not hit the character, if you critically succeeded or critically failed. We have kind of a running bit at the table that we're at where people continually ask, is that a crit? After pretty much every roll. You don't have to do that. Typically, the DM will tell you. And then the DM tells you, yes, you hit, no, you missed, whatever. And then they'll kind of walk you through the next steps of that roll in terms of, okay, you crit, so you get to do double damage, roll your dice, roll your normal number of dice, and then double it, and we'll call it that. And then for this guy's third action, if he has a shield, he can raise his shield. He can attack again. However you want to do it. Yes, Possum Appreciator. There is a deck of cards that you can purchase that is a critical... I don't think I have it with me, but basically if the group agrees that everybody wants to use it, it can either give you bonus effects or bonus things to have happen if you critically succeed or critically fail on a roll, depending on what happens. It's super fun. It does give a little bit of extra randomness, so some people really like it because it, again, gives more stories to the game. Other people don't particularly care for it. So, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. So the other thing is, in Pathfinder, there is a thing called a multi-attack penalty. Because you can, if you want, use all 3 of your actions in a turn to attack somebody, to attack a creature or what have you, there is a thing called the multi-attack penalty that if you use all 3 of your turns to try and attack this guy repeatedly, well, what happens is, say you're a fighter and you're trying to swing a sword at this guy that's standing right in front of you. Well, if you think about it from an actual IRL standpoint, well, you swing once, so you swing, your sword comes back across, swinging from right to left. Well, now if you want to attack again, you have to stop yourself from moving and you have to swing back the other way. There's a little bit of an adjustment to do that. And so what happens then is the multi-attack penalty comes into play. Basically, you still do your same roll again, but then you just subtract 5 points off the attack roll, not as a punishment, but just as a recognition that, you swung once, you probably took a little bit of the wind out of yourself, and you have to adjust to try and swing again. Well, and if you want to use all three, then you can actually, basically the math works out to be 2 multi-attack penalties, so it's a -10 instead of a -5, because you've now swung 3 times at this guy, and you're a little bit winded. So it helps balance the game a little bit so that you don't have one person just going in and swinging this massive war axe or this massive warhammer trying to smack somebody in the face. It's a lot of times you're not going to use all 3 actions for attacking. Occasionally you can. It's just a balance thing within the system. The other thing that you can do, or that our character in this case could have done, is say you're back here. He moves forward with 1 action to strike. He strikes on the second action, and then if he wants, he can back up again, and he can say, oh, I don't want this guy to be directly in my face. So he uses his third action to back up. Now that's where something called a reaction comes into play. Everybody has the opportunity to, if you've taken a feat or a spell or something that has the reaction trait to it, you can react to what other characters are doing. So let's say in this example that we have, it's this guy's turn. He takes his 2 steps forward, hits this guy, and then says, okay, now I want to back up again. Well, let's say that this character has a reaction to attack a character that is moving out of his threatened space or his threatened squares. Now, because this character is standing in this square, his threatened squares are any of the 8 squares directly around him, because 2 characters can't stand in the same square at the same time. It just doesn't physically work. But if somebody is standing in one of the 3 squares above him, either of the squares next to him, or any of the 3 squares below him, those are his threatened squares. So let's again say this guy comes up, attacks, and then backs up. If this person has a reaction that is attack of opportunity, then as this guy is moving back, this creature gets to attack our fighter using his reaction. Now, you do want to be careful about that, because in terms of reactions, you get 1 per round. So, and round is basically everybody gets a turn in a round, and it's in that specific order that was determined by the initiative earlier. If you use a reaction in a round, you don't get to use that reaction again until after the end of your next turn. That way somebody's not saying, oh, I'm going to react to this, and I'm going to react to that, and I'm going to react to these 3 other things. Because the way that combat works is each round functionally is about 6 seconds of real world time in combat. I will tell you that it never, ever works out to be that fast in any game. Ever. So, basically everything that you do will have some sort of meaningful choice to what's going to happen. Whether it's attacking multiple times in a turn, whether it's backing away. You don't know, most of the time you're not going to know if a creature has a reaction, an attack of opportunity, or anything like that until the first person either says, you can use something like, going back to our character sheet. Let's say, let's say that this guy, for his first action on his turn, said, oh, I want to know what kind of a creature I'm facing. Okay, so at that point, the GM would call for some sort of a roll. Typically something like that is going to be either, you know, if it's a kind of a natural creature, it depends on the type of creature that they're fighting, but the GM will say, okay, I need you, to roll this specific check. They have a difficulty class that you are trying to beat. They may or may not share that with you. Some do, some don't. And then depending on how well you do with that check determines, okay, how much information do you get? And what type of information do you get? Like, basically, if you succeed, they'll typically ask you, like, okay, what do you want to know? And then they'll determine, like, okay, is that something that you would reasonably know? Is that something that you wouldn't know? If your character is like a scholar that would have done a lot of research and would know, oh, that's, you know, a kobold, it doesn't have an, you know, it doesn't have an attack or an attack of opportunity or whatever, you know, they would give you that information depending on how well you or poorly you rolled. Okay. So I know that was a lot of information in a very short amount of time. And I know that we didn't really get into a whole lot of depth. I know that was just a very, like I said, super high level kind of overview of how everything works and all that kind of stuff. But does anybody have any questions, any comments, anything that you would like to hear more about, anything that I could go over more? I feel like I've kind of gone through just about everything that I really wanted to look at today. Okay. And if thank you so much, I appreciate it. And this is, yes, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes is about this. Thank you, Possum. I appreciate it. I know there's a lot. Let's see. There's a lot of information in Pathfinder, and kind of getting past that initial Petunia Periwinkle requests a session on Leshy familiars. Oh, okay. We can definitely talk about that. So familiars are one thing that I still am even getting getting used to. We have a player in my current game that I am GMing that is I think she's a ranger, and she has a familiar that is a hawk pet. So still trying to learn more about that. Let's see. We can look for familiars. Struggling to sort it out. Mine is a mushroom leshy familiar named Plum Bum. That's a great name, first of all. Let's see. Trying to remember where familiars are. So while I'm thinking about it, there is a really great website for Pathfinder stuff called Archives of Nethys that is super good for all of these things. So in general, so familiars are essentially pets. They can take different forms, different shapes, things like that. And so familiars see. Specific familiars. Plum Bum's #1 best pal. Welcome in, Carl. Let's see. Do they have Leshy familiars on here? No. Okay. So let's see. Leshy. So, Leshies are absolutely amazing creatures. So, Leshies are immortal nature spirits placed in small plant bodies, speaking to experience the world. So that's one form of Leshy. There's another one. This one is really cute. Thank you so much for that silent lurk. Okay, so yes, the art is absolutely incredible in Pathfinder. So Petunia, if you don't mind me asking, what... Because this is also a learning opportunity for me to kind of look into it more and honestly just figure it out. What are you having difficulty with on your familiar? Tell me more. Struggle with what he can actually do for me. Okay, that we can definitely look at. 201. Let's see. Familiar. Besides comic relief, that's fair. Player core page 201. Okay, so that... To make sure I tell you the right thing, is your character a familiar or a wizard? Leaf Druid. Okay. So, familiars, and I'm just going to go straight off of archives for part of this. Familiars are mystically bonded creatures tied to your magic. Most were originally animals, though the ritual of becoming a familiar makes them something more. Gain the pet general feat, except that your pet has special abilities. Common choices include bats, cats, foxes, ravens, and snakes. Druid's Leshy Familiar has the plant or fungus trait instead of animal. You can replace one or gain a new one as described in the pet feat. Okay. So yeah, it is... So when you gain your pet, choose 2 of the following abilities. So you picked a Leshy, so it does not have the fly ability, or it doesn't require the fly ability. So if you're following along, this is the link to the Archives of Nethys feat description, which is essentially what the familiar rule is based off of. The difference is that with familiars instead of pets, since familiars aren't functionally permanent creatures, instead of picking 2 specific abilities out of this list that pet always has, you can change every day. So say, you're very welcome. So say one day you want your Leshy to be able to fly and breathe underwater. You can do that. The next day, you basically recreate that familiar and you can give it different abilities if you want. So but yeah, so that is the Archives of Nethys. Just in general is a fantastic resource for all of this. Let's see. You're very welcome. Yay, I helped somebody. So, your familiar can communicate empathically with you as long as it's within 1 mile sharing emotions. It doesn't understand or speak languages normally, but it can gain speech. With familiars, instead of choosing 2 abilities when you gain it, you choose 2 abilities each day during your daily preparations. You can choose from familiar abilities and master abilities. You can choose pet abilities from a feat as familiar abilities as well. You can't swap out abilities that are innate. You can't choose to not give a raven flying. Okay. So that was the pet link, and then this is the one. That second link is specific to familiars, just because they are slightly different than pets, but functionally having a good understanding of how the pets work really helps with then how the familiars work, just because they are a little bit different. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I was really nervous about it because I'm prone to making mistakes, and this is a very big opportunity to make mistakes. But yeah, really, pets and in general familiars are there to help you. For some of their abilities, like yeah, most GMs are willing to take the time to kind of help answer questions and things like that, especially if it's that's one of the things that I want to do is if I start a group that would be, doing something like this offline, I would be very clear and upfront that it is a beginner group. I want people to ask questions. I want people to get familiar with it and get used to it. My group switched to Pathfinder after the OGL fiasco. Yeah, there were a lot of people that did, and honestly, that it's such a good thing. There's not a right way or a wrong way to play tabletop games, but there is a right way and a wrong way to merchandise those games, and Wizards went way the wrong way with it. But they're a business. They're doing what businesses do. But yeah, most of the time, most familiars are, and with pets, pets and familiars are different than, for example, we have a person who has a wolf companion, which even is different because companions can actually do things like attacking and such. Familiars are there to Familiars are there to help benefit you in non-combat functions, whereas companions are there to actually help like attack and do things like that. So it what you want the pet for kind of determines if it's a pet or is it a companion. Familiars and pets and things like that typically are more for helping you do things in both in and out of combat. Doing things like, go explore, go go track this person, things like that. So that's where kind of what it comes down to. So like as a druid, you could use your familiar for like scouting and things like that. Like, climb up this tree and tell me what you see, because your familiar can communicate with you empathically. And specifically like a leshy familiar, like what you have, if there is a group of other leshies that it runs into, it could communicate with those leshies and give you information. Like big group of leshies, and there was, hey, did that orc that we're trying to follow go this way? And they can give you information because your leshy can communicate with them and your leshy can communicate with you in specifics of a leshy. Familiars, pets, companions, all of those have a lot of really good benefits. But yeah, so Archives of Nethys, excuse me. I'm going to have some Madrinas before the movie tonight, or I'm going to be falling asleep. In general, Archives of Nethys is an amazing website for playing Pathfinder, 1st edition, 2nd edition, 2nd edition remastered, anything Pathfinder related. It is also a fantastic resource if you are interested in playing Starfinder. Starfinder is designed by the same company that is also run. Starfinder and Pathfinder are designed by the same company. They're using functionally almost the exact same rules, play style, actions, things like that. And there are a lot of things that point to Starfinder being basically the same universe, the same planes, whatever, as Pathfinder. So there's a lot of crossover between the two. And some creative GMs might actually take advantage of that at some point if they already haven't. But yeah, so that's a really useful website to look for pretty much anything, even if you don't necessarily have access to the books. The other thing that is really cool about Pathfinder that I really enjoy, and my group has taken significant advantage of, is aside from the starter kit, there are a lot of, they're called adventure paths for Pathfinder that are pre-written stories, because that's the other thing that a lot of people have a hard time getting into with tabletop games is, oh, well, I have a group that wants to play, but we don't know how to write a story. Well, that's what Pathfinder Adventures is for. They are pre-written stories, basically, and they typically come in, they're in the process of turning them into single books, so you only have to buy one copy. But they're in the process of converting them. But most right now are anywhere from 3 to 6 books long, So Paizo, the company, originally started off as I believe it was like a magazine publisher for D&D. And so kind of their base existence was creating adventure paths that ran over the course of several months. So with the first month of, a 3-month subscription to the magazine, you got part 1 of this adventure path. And then in the next month, they published part 2. And then in the next month, they published part 3. So that's kind of where the previous version of adventure paths came from was, we're running one right now where it's broken up into 3 different books. Now they're in the process of redoing that so that everything is just one big book, so that you get the whole self-contained path. But this is a thing that Pathfinder does, and I think D&D does it as well. They're just pre-published adventures. So if you have somebody in your life who says, hey, I want to run a game, buy them the starter box. That's all you need to start the game, because it has a book that just is, here's how you run this campaign as a GM. Here are pre-started characters with all the numbers and everything like that broken down so that you can just get right into the game. Make sure you like it, and then you can start looking at the other stuff. Like I said at the beginning, most of the time, for most people, the only thing that you're ever going to need is player core.
What's that?
If you want to start running games, creating your own games, things like that,
I can get you one.
You got a whole
that's
half
when
already.
you start looking at the other books. So, but like my group right now that I'm actually running with my wife, Wim, and a couple of our other friends is this Wardens of Wildwood, and it's a lot of fun. So, but yeah, those are kind of the biggest struggles of starting points is these and,
What's that?
where do I start and how do I run a game?
It comes in pints?
No,
I can get you
no
one.
apologies, Sonny.
You got a whole half already.
No apologies necessary at all, ever. So yeah. At this point, I'm just kind of vamping. Just if anybody else has any other questions or anything like that. This is, like I said, it's just going to be a couple of hours stream, so I'm going to wrap up here pretty soon. Go have some dinner and relax for a bit before we get into movie night this evening. I will be around if anybody does have any other questions or anything like that that they didn't necessarily want to ask in the chat, either in the Amonis stream chat in the Discord, or I believe, yeah, we have a tabletop chatter channel in the Discord. If you have any questions, or if you just want to talk about general tabletop stuff, it's not Pathfinder specific. Not gonna yell at anybody for asking questions about other games, other systems, things like that. But yeah, if anybody does have any questions or anything like that, I will. It seemed to go pretty well, so if people want me to do another one of these, I absolutely will. This one I will probably go ahead and post on YouTube, so if people want to, because I know Twitch isn't always available for people everywhere, and I don't want to lose this VOD. If anybody has any questions or anything like that, or if you just want to rewatch it, we did keep it pretty low key, so it'll be on YouTube. And then, yeah, we can talk about all sorts of other good stuff next time. And then, yeah, so one of the things that I will do before our next... Yeah, we'll definitely do another one. One of the things that we can do next time, and I'll make sure that I give people plenty of advance notice, is we can actually look at one of my absolute favorite tools in the world for Pathfinder. There is a website called Pathfinder or Path Builder that is specific for second edition. Yes, 10 out of 10 tool that actually walks you through the step of building characters. And it is so good. So next time we'll definitely get into that process. If anybody has characters that they would like to see built, we'll do some votes and things like that on, okay, what kind of character should we build, and walk through that process. We'll probably look through the quote-unquote normal build process as well, just so people are familiar with all the different stuff. We'll look at probably a more advanced character sheet, because then we can start getting into the distinction between spellcasters and non-spellcasters, weapons, all sorts of stuff like that. In the meantime, I do really appreciate everybody coming by. I know this was a very different stream than my usual ones, but I appreciate you all being here. I hope everybody had a good time. I hope you learned at least a little bit. Maybe are a little more familiar and a little less apprehensive about Pathfinder if somebody starts talking about it, or if you want to reach out to your friendly local dungeon master and say, hey, I heard about Pathfinder. Tell me more. If this is something that you think you might want to do, but you would rather do it in person, I definitely encourage you to look up your friendly local game store. They're pretty much everywhere. And, a lot of them these days have Discords and things like that. Reach out, say, hey, do you have a Discord or someplace where people can talk about joining games and things like that? If you're comfortable finding a store and a group to play with, great. If not, like I said, I've been thinking about it and I just haven't pulled the trigger yet, but I will start looking at maybe putting together a weekend afternoon, evening group to play in the Discord. That way people can kind of get used to it. We'll get it figured out and we'll go from there. In the meantime, though, I am going to be done talking for the moment. And let's see who is doing what. Okay, so I want to look and I want to see if there is anybody in the tabletop space that's doing something that we might be able to watch. What I don't want to do, though, is put anybody into an uncomfortable situation. Yes, it's a monist. Hi, Lily. I'm looking to see if there's anybody who's maybe starting a new session, or I know that's probably asking a lot. Season 4. I cannot see your hat at the moment, but I will look to see if there is a way to see your hat here in just a moment. Okay. Yeah, unfortunately it does look like most sessions that are going are kind of ongoing campaigns in the tabletop RPG section for right now. So I'm not going to send anybody over there. I don't want to put anybody in the middle of a story, because I know that's kind of hard to get used to. It does look like most of the friends that are online right now are playing Fortnite, because a lot of them are playing in a Fortnite tournament. So if nobody is opposed to watching some Fortnite, I know the new season just started. We'll go over and... Sorry, I'm trying to figure this out. Yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll go over and we'll say hi to Bree, Busy Bee Bree, who is we've been hanging out there. She is participating in a Girly Pop Palooza blind duo tournament. So we'll go over and we will give her some support. We'll ask her why she's bad at Fortnite, but not really because I'm not any better. So we'll go over and we'll do that. Do keep in mind we do have I need to stop talking before these ads start. We do have Twilight, New Moon, I think, Eclipse, whatever the third one is called. I can never remember. We do have that starting in about an hour and a half in the Discord. So if you want to stop by and watch some Twilight with us, I will try to keep my pithy comments to a minimum in the chat, but you know, I'm funny. Sorry. I think I'm almost done. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming and hanging out. I really appreciate it. I hope everybody has a great rest of your weekend. Like I said, movie night in Discord. Otherwise, Wim will be doing some more of her fantasy build tomorrow. Otherwise, we will talk to you next time. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Fire's low, but the spirit's high. The stars are winking in the sky. One last round before we part. Raise your mugs and warm your heart. Iman is leads with a voice so true. A home for the many, not just a few. Last call, friends, before we go. The laughter fades, but the love will grow and keeps the peace.